Hola, soy Lola, and you're listening to the 3 Count Podcast.
Weighing in at an unbelievable weight that you might hate, but you can't even.
Dang, high pass, we find that drag ball at.
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering the Ring. I am your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller. That's right, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. You can call me a Sherpa. You better call me your Sherpa. But like every good Sherpa, you got to have somebody who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. And that's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. And so today, you can find this man at 1CW, SWA, SWO, Warriors of Wrestling, ESPW, DCW, and EWA. He is the arsenal of the casuals. Pops, if you know him. Resident Haas of the Goons and the affiliate of Art of War. You see him right there, right next to me. Give it up for A.K. Willis.
I do not deserve that intro, but thank you. You're too kind.
I did forget to tell you that I do these big intros.
That's great. I love it. I'm all about it. Makes me feel great.
Appreciate it. Well, one man, welcome to the show. And it's
gotcha.
It's awesome
Appreciate
to have
it.
you
Thank
here,
you,
man. Yeah.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we met actually at 1CW like last month we met, and then we met each other. We ran into each other again at SWA. But I'd always heard about you, and I'm like always trying to like catch up. But like we had Jason on, and I was like, well, I have to get AK. I was like, there's no doubt about this.
Yeah.
But I always feel weird, man. Like I tell people all the time, I always feel weird because like I hate sliding into people's DMs and just being like, hey, yo, you want to be on my podcast? Because I feel like that would be kind of weird just doing that.
It's okay. How you know when you don't, it's the same as like reaching out and hitting up a promoter, you know what I mean? Because I would always ask for advice on that kind of stuff. And it's just like, what do I do? They were just like, just ask. You know, I mean, you put together like a professional approach and everything like that, but there's always this thing about like thinking you're too thirsty or like not wanting to come off with like, well, I mean, it's just you're asking for a job, right? So, I mean, you have to ask. That's the first part about getting the job is you got to ask. So, and I mean, it's you got to be a little more persistent, but yeah, man, it's nothing weird about it. If you want to do something, just ask. Yeah, that's how I look at it anyway. You know?
Yeah, and that's the thing though. It's like it's always like I always tell myself too. It's like the worst that's gonna happen is they're gonna say no. They're not really saying no to you. They're just saying no to the idea. I was like, so you just go ahead and do it. But I still trip, dude, because like even like sending messages to women, like female wrestlers.
I understand that.
That one I'm just like, nah. I was like, I'm gonna wait to meet you in person, and that way you can just kind of creep.
It's tricky. It's tricky with that kind of stuff, man. I mean, thankfully, I'm not in a position to where I have to reach out to like any female talent that for anything, really. But I could imagine that. You know what I mean? It's probably easier to just. I mean, but at the same time, like I said, if you have like a professional approach, just like, hey, like this is what I have. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't just if it doesn't deviate from male to female, and it's like literally the same thing, then I guess it might not come off as creepy. But I mean, you never know. Everybody's different. Like you said, some people just say no to the idea and not necessarily you. So yeah, I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah, I was joking with Chaz, because he's the other host of the debate show, and I was joking with him, and I was like, dude, like at one time I think I sent out like 200 responses. And I got 56 back. And out of the 56, I think we got 55 of them to agree to be on the show. So it was kind of cool. But then it was very nerve-wracking. But then even the one that got no, right? I got my no to. Like I wrote this big email. I included like links and I did like all the works, right? And then I got a one-word email back.
Just no.
Just no. Now I was like, you know what? Not even mad.
Listen, I mean, you know what's crazy about no is that they got it and they answered. You know, And I personally, if I reach out to a promoter, like that's the worst feeling is to get no sold when you reach out to a promoter. Because like, okay, you're taught to like put together these like professional approaches. So it's like almost like putting together a resume. You don't want to hit up a promoter and be like, hey dog, what's up? I see you running such and such up the road trying to get on the card. You ain't gonna do that. You know what I mean? Unless you're like friends with the guy already, which in that case, what's the point? You know? But like so you gotta dress it up. He was like, good afternoon or how are you doing, sir or ma'am or whatever. And you have to express your interest in working and then attach like promo pictures and then match footage. And you gotta make sure the match footage is like, do they want whole matches or do they want clips? It was like, okay, well, I'll include both, and then it's like, so you do all of that. It's like, okay, this part's good. I got my best promo picks, my very best promo picks. I deleted these and added these. So I thought these were better. And then I said, no, these are better. So I went back and added them. And then, I very carefully selected my very best footage and you send it to these people and you get left on red. And it's like, you go through all that and it's just like nothing. But that's honestly, it's like the name of the game when it comes to like getting like start like wrestling. It's just in general, and not even just getting started, just like indie wrestling in general. Like unless you have a name, because I mean, if you really think about like in the grand scope of the business, there aren't that many names. I mean, there's a lot of people in wrestling that have names, but when you really think about it, there's way more of us like on a certain level to where we're having to reach out to different promoters to get work, you know? And so like we're those people who are gonna have to reach out, and you hear there's so many. I've gotten no sold more than I've gotten no, and no is okay because no means okay, they watched my footage. At least I feel like they watched my footage. They read my message, so they see that I'm professional. They see that I'm professional, and they see my approach, and and there's never been like a stone cold no. It's always been one guy I got. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No. By all means, the one thing that so to be fully transparent, right? This is something that on the show, like, and mind you, I think this is like 194 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
No one's ever brought up the wrestler resume. Like that's just not a topic that ever gets talked about. So now, full transparency for all those at home watching. You have to have a resume put together, and like AK is like letting you guys know like this happens.
and it varies. So let me preface this by, and it's crazy too because you started out calling me a veteran, and I'm like, dog, I've been wrestling for like 4 or 5 years. So it's like, I mean, I appreciate it, and it's like I'm not new or anything, but like, I mean, I've been doing it long enough to be able to tell people this kind of stuff, obviously. And like I've learned from people who've been wrestling longer than I have, and even people who haven't been wrestling longer than I have, been like farther than I have and done other things, because the biggest part of this business is just like listening to people who know more than you and like applying it to literally everything. Like that's like, you have to do that. You have to do that. You won't go anywhere. But anyway, like I was saying, where was I? I was on the resume, right?
Yep. We were talking about how you had reached out to somebody.
Yes. So I reached out to this one guy, and he didn't give me a yes, but he had actually asked me. He was like, it's so weird because I don't want to like, okay, so and I'm not, this isn't like heat or anything. This isn't like I'm saying anything bad because I'd still work for the guy. And I don't know if the answer would change between then and now. But when I reached out, he looked at my my pictures and my footage, and he saw that like I had a gun like on my gear, right? And I think he was like, well, we run a family show, and I'm just not I'm not sure how the gun gimmick will go over with the family gimmick and the atmosphere. So would you mind working under a hood? And I was like, all right, so okay, so on one hand, I'm no diva at all whatsoever, period. I'll go, not anywhere and do anything, but if it's work, I'll go do it, You know what I mean? And that's like
Right.
actually a part of my resume. When I tell them, I was like, I can fill any role that you need, heel, babyface, tag team, singles, whatever you need, I can fill the role. I always make sure I say that. And then he was like, would you mind working, do you have any other kind of like secondary gear? And it's like, I have like a lot of gear, but it's all got the gun on it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I guess I'd never considered having gear that didn't have that on it. But it was just the weird because I've never been put in that position before to where someone's asked me, okay, well, can you wrestle under a hood because your gimmick's too violent? And I'm like, my gimmick's not violent. It's literally just a play on words. Like I don't like do a gun motion with my hand. I don't I don't pretend to shoot people. I don't even talk about guns with me. Like I don't even, it's none of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think it just came down to like a misunderstanding because the guy was like super old school. But like at the same time, he was thanking me for he was like, I really respect the way you approach me. And he was like, a lot of guys don't know how to do that. And a lot of guys really, so it was like, I could tell that, whoever trained you or whoever you learned from was old school based on your approach. And, I really like it and I'd like to work with you. But the gimmick thing is kind of a hang up with me. And I was just like, I told him no. And I wasn't being stuck up about it. But the thing about it is for me, I'm 33 years old, by the way. I'm 33 years old. I'm married. I have 3 children now. And it's like, I love wrestling. I love it to death, as much as I love anything. And I haven't reached my ceiling with wrestling, but at the same time, and I'm stealing this from my buddy, Robbie Radke. And he says this a lot, and I agree with him completely. For wrestling, for me, if I'm going to do something, I want it to help further and progress my career, but at the same time, I want it to be artistically fulfilling, and that doesn't mean I'm going to be picky about what I do. That doesn't mean I'm going to like everything I do or anything like that. But if you're going to give me the choice, and it depends on what promotion it was. Now, if this was like an MCW or like a like a PPW up in like Pennsylvania, like one of those promotions that's clearly like the biggest in its state or area, you know what I mean? One of those promotions where you just say it and everybody goes, oh, that's awesome. You get to work there. You know what I mean? Then I'd be like, sure, man, I'll go out and buy a mask right now. You know what I mean? Because, because you get on a place like that and it leads to future work. You know what I'm saying? But we weren't, and no disrespect to this particular promotion, but we're not talking about that type of place that asked me to do that. And I was just like, just gonna respectfully decline to work in the mask because it's outside of my comfort level, and which is saying a lot because I've done a lot of things outside my comfort level, and it was just, I don't know, it just didn't feel right to me, so I said no. And it's weird. Yeah, it does. It's weird because there's a lot of purists and like people who would just you never say, if anybody asks you to do something, then you do it. If a promoter wants you to do something, but I mean, like at the same time, you're a performer. This is art to us. You know what I mean? And part of being a wrestler, it is making it. But that's up to interpretation. Making it is really in the eye of the beholder. What you consider making it. You could consider getting on a show and just being booked at the same place for 4 or 5 years and just not wrestling anywhere else. That might be making it to you. I mean, obviously, it's subjective, but that's not even the point I'm trying to make. It's just at the end of the day, like we're performers, and it's an art form that we have, and our characters, our personas, what we do when we break the curtain is that's us painting on the easel, and it can be rough giving somebody else that paintbrush at this stage in your career. Because at this stage in your career, you're on the road, you're doing reps, you're doing seminars, training camps, all this other kind of stuff. And you're preparing yourself to be able to go to hopefully potentially like an Impact or like an ROH or something like that, where somebody else is going to have the paintbrush,
Right.
um but at this stage in your career, like, you got the paintbrush, and like, it's your artistic vision, and you're trying to get the people that you want to book you to buy your paintings, to buy into your art.
Yeah,
And
it's
like,
interesting, man, because like you talk about it like, full transparency. It's funny how you were talking about you're 33. I'm 36. So I definitely can like relate to that idea of like you're not picky and choosy. You're just like like, hey, like this is just not something that I want to do. So you just kind of like defer from there. And then you move into like another section where you're like, all right, I like this place because it's one of those things. And it's funny because you talk about making it. And it's something to me, it was like my dream for my entire life was just to be a pro wrestler.
yes,
Just
man, yes.
walk in the door. Like
Hmm.
once I started training and taking bumps, everybody's like, all right, well, you're training to be a pro wrestler. You're not quite there. Then the first
Hmm.
match I had was a tape match for C3W. And then after
Hmm.
that, it was my first show was actually at SCWA in Glendale, West Virginia.
Okay.
And then at that point, that's when everybody was like, all right, now you're here. I'm like, okay, so I've now accomplished my childhood dream. Now I have to dream bigger. And
Yes.
it's crazy to think like once you hit that workload, now you have to keep pushing out farther. And
Mhm.
it's weird, but it's really cool at the same token. Because like now you're like, oh well, I'm saying I feel like you're at college, right? And then you just look around, you're like, all right, I made it to college.
Yeah, yeah.
What am I gonna do now?
And it's because I'm already doing way more in wrestling than I thought I would. And so like when I started, um, shoot, when did I start training? Oh my gosh. I started training, I think, when I was like 28. So we're talking like 2016, I believe. And when I started, it was just because I was a yarder, you know what I mean? And so the problem I ran into, and we're talking, I guess, 2014, 2015. And the problem I ran into, which is that I started doing the backyard thing, right? And it was fun, but like there were things that I wanted to do that, number one, I didn't know how to do. And number two, the people that were there didn't know how to do. So I found myself in this position where I was like, man, I feel like I want to wrestle, I want to do more than just like look at a television and like sit and like pretend to do the things that are like I want to learn how to wrestle. So I was like, all right, I can't do this anymore. And number one, like, and I always told myself, I said, I never ever forgive myself if I injure myself to the point of not being able to wrestle in somebody's backyard. You know what I mean? Like, I never forgive myself. Uh, so like, I remember starting um, when I started training, and literally just like you said, all I wanted to do was just wrestle. You know what I mean? Like the goal from day one was to break somebody's curtain, wearing my own wrestling gear in front of a crowd and just wrestle, to get that entire experience, you know what I'm saying? In front of people. And I did that, and I've done it a lot now, and it's like you said, you get there and it's like, oh, so what's next? And then you start to learn about the business some, and it's like, okay, well, it's crazy because the things that you wanted to do, the things that you looked up to doing, you get there and it's like, it's not small potatoes, but at the same time it is. It's like, okay, I look at where I was like my year one. There are places that I would lose sleep over not being able to work that don't even exist anymore. You know what I mean? To put it in perspective, you know what I'm saying? Like I would lose sleep. Like I would, reach out to these promotions or, talk to the promoters, and I do ring crew setup, security, stuff like that. And I couldn't get put on the shows. They wouldn't book me. And I'm like, yo, I don't understand. Like I'm doing what I'm supposed to here. They've seen me in the ring. They know I can get around and stuff like that. Now, granted, I was still green. So like I wasn't for the best, but and I was like, I'm hungry. They know I'm hungry. I just want them to invest in me. And it's like now we're I'm at now, I probably would, if that place was, if those, the places that I'm talking about, if they were still around, I'd probably say no at this point, which is crazy, to think about. And it's like not me being big league. That's just the places that they were. But that's
But you tend
stories
to
for
outgrow. You tend to outgrow, like even in your
yeah.
own, because that was something I learned, right? And I learned it I learned it. I've learned it, right? And I'm probably going to relearn it as I get further along in my career. But like when I first tried getting in, right? Like I was working as a mercenary character, and it was like very serious. Like I had like all these serious promos, like I was cutting. But I noticed that I wasn't connecting with it, and then I was struggling. But then what I found
Yeah.
myself was like I started to grow out of it a little bit, and then like
Yes.
once Sicken saw like me explode and just start really talking like the shit that I wanted to do, he was like, well, why don't you start doing that in matches? It's like, because you guys told me you want me to go this route. He's like, dude, just be you. He's like, just open up and be you. And I felt myself just like explode and grow. And then like other people were like getting behind me, and they're like, and fellow colleagues and stuff like that, they're all getting behind me. They're like, no, go do that. Be that person. Be this guy. Like you're having so much fun. Do this and keep doing it. And I'm like, now and then I can feel myself like get bigger in the character that I work with. And it is a trip though, like to see yourself. And this is only, and we're talking like, 8 months worth of like just seeing the changes happen. And then the character goes through all these changes. You talk about you don't have a gun spot. I don't know who has a gun spot in any organization.
Right? Like, okay, right? I thought about that when I was saying it, and I was like, yeah, I don't do gun things at all, but I know people who do. But you know what I'm saying? But it's funny that you say that, and to kind of piggyback off of what you said, it's things change like when you start to wrestle, and that like there's a part of that artistic vision. But like, and for me, and it's like that with everyone too. So like when you start wrestling, like there's two things that happen, and Travis Banks, he actually had a hand in training me when I started, big hand in training me actually. And he told me, and we talk all the time, and we've spoken on this a couple of times. There's a couple things that happen as you progress in your journey, for wrestling or whatever. Very early on, you're gonna get to a point where you get it, and like things are gonna click, but it's twofold. So like things are gonna click for you as far as wrestling. So like, and what I mean by that is, okay, so you get in the ring in training, and you learn the fundamentals. You learn how to run ropes. You learn how to bump. You learn how to transition from one place to another. You learn your footwork. You learn the different parts of a match. You learn how to put a match together. You learn how to call, all that kind of stuff. So many moving pieces, all the nuts and bolts. You know what I mean? And when you're new, you're thinking about that stuff all at the same time. So like your brain is literally like in overload during a match because it's not muscle memory yet. It's not in there yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're thinking about it all the time. And that shows. You can tell who's green and who's thinking about, what's coming up next in a match, as opposed to the guy that's just, he's vibing. You know what I mean? And so at some point in your wrestling journey, that's gonna click, and it's just gonna click, and you're gonna get it. Doesn't mean you're gonna be perfect at it, but you're going to get so many reps in, or you're going to feel comfortable with all of those things that the pieces are just going to be there. It's going to be a puzzle that you've had put together already. So then when that clicks, the character stuff, that leaves room for the character stuff. You know what I mean? Like engaging with the crowd, heat, actually portraying, your artistic vision, who you are as a person, to the crowd and the people, that you want to buy it, selling yourself to the people. That stuff's hard to do when you're just thinking about what's going on in the match. You know what I mean? And like, so that's the second part of it. Eventually, that's going to click too. Who you are, who you want people to see that you are, who you want to sell to the people, which is, to your point, is just, and that changes so much, and I remember, dude, when I first started training, like so my very first gimmick that I wanted to do was going to be like a boxer. You know what I mean? Because I'm like a big fan of combat sports, right? So I was like, in my mind, I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna have these like boxing trunks, and I'm gonna have like tassels, and I'm gonna have like boxing like shoes or whatever, and like my moose set's gonna be like a bunch of punches or whatever. And so my first thing that I noticed that I realized behind that was that I'm not traditionally trained in boxing. So here's the thing. Like, I know about boxing. I love boxing as a sport. I love MMA as a sport, but I didn't want to pose. You know what I mean? I don't want to be a poser. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you either go take boxing classes to own this gimmick, or just be a little more creative and develop something on your own. Okay, so the boxer thing fell through. Second thing I wanted to do, and I was gonna do like an African Prince gimmick, which in my head is still going to happen at some point in my career. I don't know when, I don't know how, but like, dude, I had it all fleshed out, right? And so, like back in the day when I was in high school, one of the people I looked up to was, he started off as a wrestler, but now he's just a man. He's not just a manager, but he's a manager. He's been in the business a long time. Prince Nana, right? And he wrestled for ROH like back in the day. When I say back in the day, I mean like early 2000s. So like he was like early pioneer days of ROH. And then, you know, he became a manager, and he had this group called the Embassy and everything like that. You know, he was like a prince. He's like African royalty, rich guy kind of thing, right? And so like I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, yo. And I was talking to Killian, and I was like, dude, I want to do this African Prince gimmick. Like, I have it all mapped out in my head. I'm like, yo, I'll have, you know, this gear, and it'll be like this flowy, like African royalty type gear. And I'll come out to the ring, and I'll have like rose petals that I'm walking on, like coming to America. You know what I mean? And like all of that, right? and it's doable, but I was like, you know, and I was like, I think I'm reaching a little far, as far as like just breaking curtain. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know how to wrestle all the way. And I'm talking about I want to do like an African Prince gimmick and all this kind of stuff. And I think the gimmick just kind of came along with the same way that you said. Your trainers were like, just be you, and they were like, yo, I mean, you see how you get around in the ring, and like basically your persona. With how you move, just think about the people that you looked up to in the wrestling business, and the people that, you know, kind of help mold your interest as far as wrestling, and take after them. Like, what do you like when you watch wrestling? You know, what do you like? Who did you watch when you were younger and you go, that person made you want to be a wrestler, that person made you want to do that in the ring? And so for me, it was a few people. So Ron Simmons, Farouk, Booker T, people like that, you know what I'm saying? And so we're talking like, and it doesn't even have to be like no nonsense, like mean black dude, because it's like, I feel like that's kind of played out, you know? But it's like, you know, serious can be serious, you know, but like when he wants to, Farouk can be funny. When he wants to, Booker T can be funny. He can be hilarious, you know, but at the same time, you're looking at guys high impact, but at the same time, like athletic, really can be good. And it's just like, those are the people, like the way that their moves, their move sets, like their personas, like those are the people that I wanted to be when I used to watch wrestling, you know, and I took after those people. And so you think about that and you start to develop like the moves you want to do and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like your persona just kind of builds from there, you know, and it becomes you. And like you said, your wrestling persona is who you want to be. I mean, it's who you are, but just like turned up to 11.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the 80s anymore to where you have to, it's not the 80s anymore where like you're Adrian Adonis in the ring, you know, but outside the ring, you're just like a suit wearing regular guy. It doesn't have to be that, you know, you can be you in and out of the ring. Just turn the volume up when you hit the curtain, dog. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I'm at. It works, you know?
And that's something that like I genuinely like enjoy about wrestling, is that like you can be literally anyone. You just
That's the great
have
part.
to believe like in what you want to do, and then like put it out there and sell it out there. And
Yes.
it was something like at 1CW, like even when I showed up at 1CW, I was like yeah, it was like I'm obviously like walking on eggshells because I'm the new guy in there. But as soon as I hit the curtain and broke out, I was like, yep, this feels familiar. And I just like full character, let's go.
Absolutely.
And I'm just ready to go into cruise mode. And then just like, I don't know. It seems to be like a lot of people remember me now with, especially showing up at 1CW, that the choke slam spot is definitely something I see a lot of people talk about, and like taking that bump. So I'm curious with you, man, what's been one of the worst bumps that you've taken?
Let's go. Okay. All right. So okay. So one of the worst bumps I've ever taken was, without a doubt, it was a choke slam. So this is one of them. But choke slams suck. Okay. And here's why choke slams suck. And you'll understand this because you're a wrestler. But like, people who don't wrestle don't understand like the idea behind bumping on the wrestling mat. The idea behind bumping on a wrestling mat is the more stuff that bumps on the mat and covers the surface area, the more impact that's drawn away from you bumping by yourself. Okay, so like, that's why stuff like a sit out power bomb or a properly done suplex, even a superplex, doesn't really hurt that bad. But like, you're talking about, and I did it in training, and this is what sucks. It wasn't even like it was pointless, you know. So we were running stuff, and I was like, "Yo, choke slam!" I've never taken a proper choke slam, and so it was a big guy. I don't remember who it was, but I remember they were big, and they just got me. We were just playing around, and it was like, I want to do like a real proper choke slam. So we just like straight up, you know, like Undertaker style, and I was like, douche, and I was like, that was the worst bump I've ever taken in my entire life, and because I mean, you can do it properly, but it's like, man, you're just coming from above the top rope, and it's just you on the mat landing next to nobody, and it's just like, even if you take the bump properly, dude, the choke slam sucks. It absolutely sucks. Now, I don't think that's not the worst. It's one of the worst ones I've ever taken. But let me see, the worst bump I've ever taken. It was small. And I'm not going to put the person's name out there. Anyone who knows me and they're watching this, they're going to know who I'm talking about, because I don't believe in like doing the whole heat thing or throwing people under the bus. Yep. But the people who are watching me, they're going to know who I'm talking about. So we're going to go that far. And so basically it was a power slam. And and once again, I guess more insider stuff. The idea about a power slam is, takes two people. Like, it's not just the guy picks you up and throws you over. You know, you have to jump into and feed into a power slam, and you know, you help with the rotation, and the guy, you know, he helps go over. You know, just like with most wrestling moves, it takes two people to do them properly. So we go, and I'm like, okay, we're going into this power slam, and the person doesn't grab me correctly, doesn't have control at all. So his one arm that's supposed to be here under my head is like somewhere over my head up here. And the other arm that's supposed to be deep in my crotch with the control is actually hooking my top leg. So it's like, I look like a towel hanging on like a dish rack. You know what I mean? Going over. So instead of doing like a full rotation, I'm going like at a 45-degree angle. And I ended up landing just like awkwardly on my high shoulder / neck. I didn't even fold. It's just like I hit the mat unevenly, you know, kind of like that. And it hurt so bad, like instantly. Most of the time, if you take a rough bump, you don't feel it until after the adrenaline wears off. You know what I mean? You're a little sore the next day, and you can tell where it came from. This one hurt instantly, and it hurt bad. And I was so mad because, you know, I know things happen in the ring and stuff like that, but you know, we trust each other with our bodies. You know what I mean? If you and I are going to wrestle in a match, like there's already an agreement that's in place that I trust you with my body and you trust me with yours. We might talk about what we're comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with, and that stuff gets worked out. But at the end of the day, I'm still trusting you with my well-being. You know what I mean? And vice versa. So if we get in there and you tell me that you know how to do a move and we go to do it, turns out you don't know how to do it. Oh, buddy, I'm gonna be furious. And I was furious. And so yes, botched power slam, worse. And the crazy part about it is if you like to look at the move as it was executed, it didn't even look that terrible, but it was bad. It was bad. And those are the bumps. So I always tell people, either people that don't wrestle or new people, I said, you can take 1,000 good bumps and you might feel a little bit of sting, but I said, you take one bad bump and it'll feel like you got into a car accident. And that's what it was for me. Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
It's funny because you bring up like stuff that happens at practice. I don't think I shared this story at any time. Maybe I did, like back in season 1 or something. But anyway, the one time I remember sitting on top of the top rope and I was looking at Sicken and I was like, hey, I'm about to do this. And he's like, yeah? He's like, yeah, I'm gonna jump off the top rope. This is the first time I'm gonna jump off. I was like, let's go for something crazy. It's like Akira's senton. Let's just go for it, right? And I remember jumping off and hitting the ground, and I was like, I will never do this again, ever.
Yeah, man.
all the suck. I was like, this is terrible. And then not even like 3 weeks later, we're back at practice. Almost the same thing as you're saying, right? So I had somebody, he knows who he is because by watching this episode, because I'm going to talk about it and I'll probably clip this part and even put it out there. Anyway, so he's like, hey, I want to do Randy Orton's power slam, right? And he's like,
no,
and it's at practice, right? So I'm like, this is where you're going to learn. This is where you got to learn. And so I did not know anything about it. All I knew was this is a dude. He's my veteran, and he's gonna know how to take care of me. Yeah. So I hit the ropes. I come running back, and I proceeded to land like one arm out, like my head turned like this way.
Oh no!
I scorpioned over.
Oh no! Are you serious? Oh my gosh!
And so like,
oh, see, he didn't even get you all the way over.
Yo, I don't know how it happened.
Come on, man.
But I remember landing and like hitting the ground, and then this is the best part. So all of a sudden I get told, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay? Is everything fine?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." So I'm supposed to jump apparently when this happens, and he goes, "Well, yeah." I was like, "It would have been nice to know."
He didn't tell you
doing this. I was like, "Let's run it back," and so we do it. And the second time we get it perfect the second time. But I was like, "But yeah," he was like, "Well, yeah." I was like, "What do you mean? Well, yeah, you're supposed to be the trainer."
Yeah, I was about to say, how does he not tell you that?
I was like, all right, bet. Well, I'm gonna learn it next time.
Wow. Yeah, see, and that's why when you talk about doing moves, man, like there's got to be an agreement, dog. Like somewhere, like if we're talking, and this thing, people consider me like, I guess, a powerhouse, so to speak, but I don't do any like real power. Like besides the pounce, like I don't do a whole lot of pick you up, put you down type moves. You know what I mean? That's not really my style anyway. But like, I don't do a lot of that. Not that I can't, because I can, but it just happens to be not my style. But when you talk about those types of moves, man, like if we're talking, I'm like, hey, so I want to do a thing where you go for little guys, like I like to do, where they'll shoot like a half Rana on me and I'll stop it and I'll do like a sit out power bomb or something like that. But even that, I'll ask. I'm like, hey, you good with taking that? You know, it's like, do you know? Especially new guys, man, because a lot of new people will get in the ring, or there's it's very surprising. Well, I don't want to say surprising, but some people who are trained properly will be surprised to see how many people actually are wrestling who aren't trained properly. You know what I mean? And so you get and you start to talk about these moves that you want to do. Hey, have you ever taken X, Y, and Z? Or you start calling stuff and they're like, what's that? And I'm like, wait, what? Excuse me? Like, how do you not know? Okay, whatever. And you just move on to the next thing and the next thing. but I go out of my way to make sure. And ever since like the power slam thing, not even ever since the power slam thing, because I've had a couple other situations where, people they tell me that they can do things and it turns out that they can't do them,
Right.
but you don't find out until it's too late. And I'm like, geez, man, like one of you guys are just gonna, like, how have you not like crippled a man yet? You know what I mean? With this kind of stuff. But it pays off to kind of go like the extra mile and to kind of vet, I guess, the things that you do in the ring, and just be aware of who you're in the ring with, and to make sure that the people you're in the ring with know how to do the things that they say, because at the end of the day you have to trust them with your well-being, but it's up to you to kind of determine how much trust you're going to give them. There's some people right now that if I got in the ring with them, we're doing strikes all day, baby. You're not picking me up and dropping me nowhere. It's not gonna happen. I'll bump for you all day, but it won't be because you drop me there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's just, if I had certain people, if you have to wrestle them, then it's just like, I can say that, right? Like, we're keeping it real here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can. Okay, all right. Because I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but like, it's real, dog. Like, I've okay. So I've been. I started training 5 years ago. So in that time, I've had 2 major injuries. Okay, I tore my ACL when I was training initially, and I had to take a year off for that. And actually, while I was wrestling, what are we talking? I think like 2019. I was 2019. Was it 2020? I think it's 2019. I dislocated my shoulder, my right shoulder. Like, we're talking like out, popped out. And so like, you go through those types of injuries, and it really, 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 it puts perspective, because it's not just like, oh, I'm too hurt that I'm hurt so I can't wrestle. But those injuries are like, oh, I'm hurt so I can't live daily life normally. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can't walk normally. I can't go to work. I can't literally move my right arm. So when you get those types of injuries because of wrestling, you're just forced to teach yourself to, just to be, and just to be careful about what you do, who you give your body to, that kind of thing. And it makes you be like incredibly anal. Like, and at the same time, like I said, I tend to either be like around the same size or bigger than a lot of my opponents. So I don't really get the opportunity to bump, but I love to bump. And I don't tell, like a lot of people don't know this, but it's like I love to bump. So it's like, anytime I'm in the ring with somebody bigger than me, I like get a little excited because I get to get bumped around or like thrown around. I get to, because like I like to sell, you know what I mean? Like, I like to sell. And a lot of times you don't get to sell if you don't get bumped around. I mean, I still do it anyway, but like, so I get a little giddy when I'm in the ring with somebody that's like bigger than me or twice my size. Because, it's like I get to get bumped around because I don't get to do that very often. I don't get to do that very often, but like, yeah, man, just having those injuries and having them happen in wrestling, it's just it makes you develop a different mindset when it comes to just who you trust with what, and you just kind of go like the extra mile with certain stuff, and you don't have to be a diva about it. You know what I mean?
You're trying to be safe. It makes sense.
Yeah, and that's it, and that's the key word, man. Safe, because that's number one, and people forget that, man. It's wrestling. Like, we have to be safe.
I tell people all the time. I was like, listen, man, it's clotheslines, a spine buster, and a pump handle driver.
Yeah,
Those
buddy.
that's it. Like, those are the big moves you're gonna get hit with. If you don't like it, you can't take all 3 of those moves. All right, man, we'll find something else. I can throw a Rana if I need to. I'm not trying to, but
sure.
I can.
I mean, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Go ahead. What you say?
No, I was gonna say, man, because we're talking about like we're moving into another realm where we're talking about like giving your body and stuff like that. So I'm very curious too, because this is another question I like following up with. Who's hit you the hardest?
So we talking like potato style, just like like
You know what? Like
Or
I've never asked. You know what? No one's ever asked me if it's been like shoot or if it's just been in the works.
I've never let me see. I thankfully I don't think I've ever been on the receiving end of somebody who's just thrown like straight up ham hocks. I've worked with people who are tighter than others and things of that nature. But my favorite is like um so I like to call it tight but not light. You know what I mean?
Right.
um so it's like, you know, you work tight, so it's like you make the contact, but it's not enough to hurt somebody. You know, it's enough to make the crowd, you know, react to it, but it's like it's not gonna cripple you. You know what I'm saying? Um and I don't even know who hit me the hardest, but I do have a story for that. I we were working so just either last month or 2 months ago by now. It was me and Jason. We were doing our tag team thing and with Art of War, and we were working a fight. Matter of fact, the match hasn't even dropped yet. Um because it's gonna drop on IWTV. They just dropped the first episode of the tapings that they're doing, and I think we're on episode 2, so that hasn't dropped yet. But this is the match I'm talking about. So one of my it was me and Jason versus Andino and Saul. Saul Esparza, right? And so like, so one of the moves that I do, the strikes that I do is just a big left hand. It's just like literally just the big straight left hand, and it usually looks really well, looks really good, high impact and stuff like that. But I've never actually like really caught anybody with it, like, you know, straight punched them in the face.
Right.
So they're going over this match, right? We're going over this match, and like we keep going, we keep getting to the part where, you know, I throw the big left hand at Saul, and we're practicing it, and every time we dry run it, Saul does this thing where he like leans in to it, right? And I only like halfway notice, but I'm just thinking, okay, maybe we're just going through the motions. And then Dino was looking at him. He's like, Saul keeps leaning into the punch. Like, why is he doing that? So either way, the spot was that, you know, we bit back and forth, and then I duck, and then I throw the big left at Saul. So we get to the spot, I duck, and I go to throw the left, and Saul leans in like a good, like extra foot. So where I usually like get full extension, I punch Saul right in the freaking face. And I mean, like, dog, I cleaned his clock, bro. Like, I was like, yo, how is he still standing? Because I punched him right in the face, dude. Like hard. And it's like clear as day on camera that I punched him right in the face. And I felt bad. I came this close to breaking like right there. So it was like, and it was so fast. And we were going home too. Like that was like right before we went home. So it was like, and I ducked and I said, wham, just like that. And I was like, oh. Like, and I remember whispering, I was like, dog, you good? He was like, ugh. And like, I don't know if he said anything. I don't know, but like, it was rough. So like right after the match, I went up to him. I was like, Saul, dog, I punched you square in the jaw, dude. He's like, I'm good. You know, like all smiles. And I'm like, Saul's being polite. Saul is like literally like one of the nicest guys you ever meet. Also, one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. And not on purpose. He's like, like, no, Saul's great, man, but he's like, I don't want to say The Office funny, but he's like that kind of funny. But he's hilarious, man. Saul makes me laugh all the time. But either way, like he was like, I'm great, I'm good, man. No, it was great, it's perfect, it's fine. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, it's like it was not fine. I punched him so hard.
Yeah.
Like that's the hardest I've ever hit anybody ever in a wrestling ring. The only thing that comes close to that is when Jason and we I think we debuted for EWA together at the same time. But it was like they used to have this thing called Warehouse Wars where their school, the Pain Factory, they do the Warehouse Wars deal. So we did like that's how you get onto their shows. You hit them up and it's like, hey, we'd like to blah blah blah. If they want you on or they want to see you work, they'll get you on the Warehouse Wars deal thing, and they'll see how you work, and then they'll put you on the main show if they want you there. So we got on the Warehouse Wars, and the deal was me and Mike. I was Mike. I called him by his real name. It's Jason Andrews. Me and Jason were wrestling. He wasn't even Jason Andrews at the time. He was under a hood. He wore a mask, and he called himself Dragonfly. It's he hates it, dude. If he watches this, he's gonna be so mad at me for bringing this up because he hated that gimmick, dude. It was so funny. But anyway, it was me. I was me. Like I was AK Willis, and he's Dragonfly. So I was like, all right, so I'm gonna work on your leg. So like there's a spot where I was gonna do something to get separation from him, and I was gonna kick him like under his leg, and so I kicked him. But yeah, I kicked him. Like I kicked him, and I kicked him hard, like right under like his knee on the back, like on his hamstring, and I kicked him so hard, and like I felt it when I kicked him hard, and I was like, oh man, he's gonna be mad at me after that because I kicked him really hard, and I was like, he's gonna be upset about that, and I still, to this day, I still hear about how hard I kicked him in that, but like those two, man, just like. If you're probably gonna ask, well, maybe not Saul, because Saul's probably been hit harder because he wrestled Alexander James.
Yeah, Alexander James.
Yeah, and he did. They beat the tar out of each other, so that's probably not the hardest Saul's ever been hit. But Jason will probably tell you that's the hardest he's ever been hit when I kicked him in the back of the leg. So
I've had those.
Yeah, I felt so bad about it, but it's just, I mean, you learn, and I'm glad I did it to him and not like. Some vet who was going to turn around and just like, pump me back. Yeah. I was like, well, I'd rather just be able to learn my strength. And, that's, the saying in wrestling, you hit your friends the hardest. So,
yep.
But
that's
safely.
With me. And what's funny is like, we talk about with Chaz, like I talk about here all the time with Chaz and I, like whenever Chaz and I want to turn up the intensity in a match, the first thing we do is we just dog slap the shit out of each other.
Yeah, bud.
Full hand. And then what ended up happening, I was working a practice match for another promoter for a show that he wanted me to be on at my trainer's place, right? And so we're working the practice match, and me and another friend are talking about the practice match, and he'd been out for about 5 months, and he was like, yo, I'm ready to get back into this. We can work a practice match. It's going to look real good. I'm like, all right, bet. He's like, first thing that we're going to do, we're going to tie up. I'm just going to take control because, I'm bigger than you. Like, bet, whatever. And he's like, the second time, you're going to get around me, and then I'm going to punch you. And then I'm going to hit you with a forearm into the ropes, and then we'll go from there. All right, cool. So he's like, we like just shadow box testing his range, right? We get in a match. Boom. Dead in the teeth. Just get blasted. It's like immediately he's just like, dude, are you okay? I was like, I'm fine. Keep it going. And like, then he hits me with a forearm. And then from there, like character work just automatic happens, and I just out, and I'm like, oh my god, I see dots, and he's like, dude, shut up and hit me.
Let's go, man. Like we're in it now. Let's go.
Like, let's go. Way too long. Yo, it's way too long. It's look, there's too much time that's gone by now to apologize about punching me in the mouth.
Right.
Even if it's 5 seconds ago, it's too long. We're good. Oh, I was like, and I'll never forget too. I remember like feeling my teeth. I was like, dude, this is crazy. But he was like, are you sure you can be all right? I'm like, I'm totally fine. We'll be fine. We'll keep it going. So let's say like you get done with your shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're done tearing down the ring and whatnot. What's your post-match meal?
Meal? Oh, okay. So when I wrestle, so I try to watch what I eat, like, and especially now. Okay, so I had a really rough summer. I was going through some health issues over the summer, and I actually put on some weight. And so like towards the end of the summer, like August, no, like probably like September, like no, going into October is when I really started to lose a lot of that weight that I put on in the summer. So like I've been doing like intermittent fasting, like that kind of thing, like food windows, that kind of thing. So like I've been watching what I eat. But when I wrestle is when I eat the worst. And I don't care. I'm okay with it. So like, dog, so like it depends on where I go. So if I'm anywhere in Pennsylvania, then we're going to Sheetz. All right. Anywhere in Pennsylvania, it's Sheetz. Like, it's a must. There's no Sheetz in Maryland. Especially not on the Eastern Shore where I live. So like me and Jason, we're always like 9 times out of 10 if we're up in PA, we're riding together. And so it's like Sheetz. Some disgusting fried food concoction at Sheetz after a PA show. Now, if we're up in Maryland, like if we're at EWA or something like that, then it's a Big Mac. I don't know why. I don't eat at McDonald's really like that, but it's something about the way I feel after I wrestle to where I want a Big Mac. I don't know why.
Makes sense.
Like, and nothing else from McDonald's, literally nothing else. But I gotta have a Big Mac after I finish wrestling. But outside of that, man, it's just, I mean, really whatever. But so like the places I've been wrestling recently, it's either Maryland or Pennsylvania. Those have been like the places I've been frequenting the most over like the last year, half a year or whatever. I've done Jersey a couple times, and but yeah, it's either Sheetz or McDonald's, like post. Now if I get lucky and I'm wrestling in Delaware, then I just go home and my wife has food cooked. And that's great as well. You know what I mean? But I don't know, dude, like you go through all this time and you're watching what you eat, and it's like you can only eat like between this time and that time, and you work full time and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, honestly, like after I wrestle, that's when I want to be able to eat like whatever I want.
Right.
You know, so like my post wrestling meal, and I'm probably breaking all types of freaking, like there's probably wrestlers who would watch this and be like, "Oh, that's terrible for you." And it's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't care.
No, I
don't
100%.
care.
I'm like, yo, like,
Because I have a diet and I do watch what I eat, and but when it comes to like my post wrestling meals, like you said, it's
whatever.
Yes.
If I can, if it's in my like, to be fair, like after a wrestling show, it's the seafood diet. If I see it,
yes,
it's
man,
going with me.
Mm-hmm. I definitely overindulge like after I wrestle, and then like I wake up the next day and I'm like, man, I probably shouldn't have done that, but it's a good thing I don't. It's a good thing I don't eat like this every day. You know what I mean? Because I'd be screwed. But yeah, after I wrestle, for sure.
So I'm curious, man, like what's been like one of the hardest lessons you've had to learn in wrestling so far?
So I think one of the hardest lessons is, so when I started wrestling, I probably have like a couple answers for this question, but number one is when I started wrestling, I took to it really well. Killian and I actually started training like around the same time. He started like a month before I did. And we were training, and we were pretty much like, as we were training, we both took to it like really well. So we just picked up on things. I don't want to say naturally, but we picked up on things really quick, and we were able to like progress through steps of training really well. And as we got through training, we could tell that this was something that we were going to be able to be good at. You know what I mean? Something that we'd be able to get into and call ourselves talented. And then I injured my knee, and I tore my ACL. And I didn't even do anything fancy, dog. Like, you see people tear their ACLs in like football and stuff like that. They're like either making a pivot move or they're trying to stop and go one way. I just planted my foot to take off across the ring, and my knee popped. And that was my ACL. And for me, so at that, and then fast forward 2 years later to where I dislocated my shoulder. I think those were the hardest lesson in wrestling for me, was that at any given time, like, your body can give up on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. We do all this stuff in wrestling. We do all this training, and we learn all these. We learn all these rules and stuff like that to keep ourselves safe and keep our opponents safe. To protect each other and everything like that. We do all this stuff. We go out of our way to do all this stuff to be safe. And sometimes the thing that injures you and takes you out of wrestling for a year plus is just putting one foot in front of the other and trying to walk. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Stuff like that, dude. And that's harsh because, you know, you got all these plans, all these ideas, and all this stuff you want to do in wrestling. And this isn't like we're not contracted workers. You know, this isn't our full, like, we don't get paid. It's not our full-time job, you know? So like we also have like work full-time jobs to consider, like actual real life on the other end of things. And you know, just the fact that your body can just literally say, you know what, you're not wrestling for another year, you know, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's a lot to process, dude. It does a lot to you mentally, you know, because you're going through this and it's like, yeah, I'm good at wrestling, I can do this, you know. I'm good at this, I'm going to pursue this, I'm good at it. And then your body just decides to give up one day, or just, and it sucks. And it is, I almost didn't come back from wrestling. Like I almost quit after I tore my ACL, because it's like it's a really rough recovery process, you know, from the surgery. To be able to just move normally like you used to be able to, let alone be physically active enough to wrestle, you know, and go back to how you were before, you know. It's rough, man. And that was, it was mentally really, really hard. Because there's so much telling you that, you know, you'll never be able to do that again. And you have to fight all that. You know what I mean? You just have to literally fight all the thoughts that are like, you know, well, you probably shouldn't wrestle anymore. I'm in my late 20s. You know, most people get this thing started when after they're 18 or 19. You know what I mean? And so here I am in my late 20s. I have a career, you know, I'm married. So it's like, what business do I have after I destroy my knee and have it surgically repaired to keep trying to wrestle? You know, it's like you got all these things that are telling you not to do it. And yeah, that that and the second answer to the question, and I'll be short with this one, is just that and we talked about this earlier. Some people are just no. No. And that's one of the hardest lessons to learn as a wrestler, is just you're gonna have to get used to no, you know?
Yep.
And so even when we're talking about like reaching out to promoters and them no selling you, leaving you on red, it's still a no, because it's not a yes. You know what I mean? Anything that's not a yes is a no. And just, you really, 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 really have to get used to hearing no. And dealing with it. Because I mean, if they don't want you on, they're not going to put you on. You know what I mean? If they don't have a spot for you, then they don't have a spot for you. There's nothing that you can do that can change that, except keep wrestling, keep grinding, get better to where they want to put you there. And that, man, actually, thinking about it, that might even be a harder lesson to learn than like the whole injury thing, because, you know, that can actually play into you know, insecurities that you might have about yourself. You know what I mean? It's like, man, maybe I do suck. You know, I've been trying to get in this one promotion for 2 years and I've gotten better. I've gotten more places. I've gone farther than I ever thought I could. These people still won't book me. Maybe I am trash. You know, you start thinking like that. It's hard to fight off those types of thoughts. And all that stems from hearing no over and over and over and over and over and over again. So you just gotta, I mean, just like being a salesman, you know what I mean? Just imagine how many times a door-to-door salesman hears no. Or like somebody that works in a call center that does cold calls, who just calls random numbers. Think about how many times they get hung up on or hear no. Like that's you as a wrestler, you know? That's going to be you as a wrestler. I don't care who you are, unless you're like one of the few people that get TV deals right after they train. But those are 1 in a million people. But
Right.
people like us who train at, you know, like, you know, humble places and, you know, have to go through the local independent scene, like that's going to be you. Just hearing no. And just coming to terms with the fact that you should get used to no, you should expect no, or nothing, almost to the point where you're surprised if someone reaches out, you know, I was like, yeah, we'd love to have you on, you know? A lot of the connections I've made and the places I've been to were through other places, you know, like when we wrestled for Fight, it's because Johnny saw me at 1CW, you know, or when I wrestled for a Pizza Party Pro up in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. That's because the promoter saw me at SWO, you know, stuff like that. That's how you get your bookings, really. I mean, but we're talking about those cold calls, so to speak, where you're just hitting random promoters up. You know, I mean, even if you got some buzz to your name, you're still gonna hear a lot of no's or like a lot of no sells, and it's just like,
Yep.
super rough. And I think as a wrestler, that's because it's enough, especially when you get started and you think you're something. You know what I mean? Like you feel confident about yourself and you're like, I have so much to offer the wrestling business. I have so much to offer these people. They would probably love to have me. I'm exactly what you need for your promotion. And then it's a no from them, you know? And then it's a no from the people that you hit up after them. And you take a whole day, you spend a whole day sending your resume out to all these different promotions. And it's like, man, I hit all these people up. There's no way I'm going to come up with nothing. All of them are either no or nothing. And it's like, what, you know?
Yeah, that's why I have a podcast, because I'm like, hey, let me bring your promotion on my podcast, and then we can talk. Because then at that point, I have face to face. I've had a lot of people just tell me, like, you know, we've always talked about like having guests on here. Like I've had so many people just either blow me off or tell me no. And I'm like, hey, or the worst ones, and this is probably worse than a no, and this is probably worse than someone who ghosts you, is when someone says yes and then they don't show.
Oh, that's the worst.
That's the worst.
Yeah. Ah, man. Yeah. I I had one promotion and it actually worked out because I was able to book something directly, like super close to that. I had one promotion book me and I reached out to them because they did a terrible job of promoting their show. But this is when they were like just getting started out anyway. Right. And I reached out to them like the day before the show. And the promoter was like, full disclosure on me. He was like, I forgot that I booked you. I was like, man, we talked about pay and everything right here, dude. And he was like, yeah, dog, I don't have a spot for you, man. And I'm like, okay. Like, because you know how it is as a wrestler, man. Like, we have real lives. So we have to plan our weekends here, you know? We have to put these weekends together in advance. So it's like I was supposed to come up, you know, it's like a 4-hour drive. You know, I'm getting a hotel like that night, so I don't have to drive back home. And, you know, now you're telling me you didn't book, like what? You know, so it was just, yeah, that was just like that. That's only happened to me once though. That's only happened to, but that's weird. That's a weird circumstance to actually tell someone you like agree to terms. Yep. Even to the point where a pay and the day comes and it's like, oh, I don't have a spot for you. That was so weird. That was so weird. But that did happen to me. It reminded me of that when you said that people, you know, don't show up. But it's got to suck on your end because it's like this is your time.
Yeah, you get loaded up and everything's ready to go. When you hit the person up and they just ghost you.
Yeah, what is that, man?
And I had to take the time. I made your index card for you too, so the graphic card comes up for the pocket. Yeah, and you didn't show. And I'm like, whatever, it's a waste of a card, I guess. But it is what it is. I've had it happen a few times. I'm like, whatever. And then this is the best when it hits you up and tell you, hey, yeah, sorry, I can show up next. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I have a person that day.
Yeah, just have a little more respect for someone's time. You know what I mean? That's I don't like that. That's weird to me. Like, especially wrestlers, man. That should be a part of our discipline. Is like to respect other people's time and effort when it comes to doing things like this. It should kind of be a part of your discipline to like respect that. It's just kind of weird to just be like, nah, like
we could talk names after this is all wrapped up. We ain't gonna drop names now. But
no, we don't do that. We don't do that.
But those are kind of like all like the big heavy questions that I do have. But we do have to get into the second best segment of the 3 Count podcast. People ask me, what's the first? It's the Red Dogs Power Rankings. You guys know this by now. Okay, you catch us every Sunday on our debate show. But this is the 3 Count podcast, 10 count questions. And Mr. Willis, this is how it works. I'm gonna fire off 10 questions at you. Whatever's your answer, that's your answer.
Okay.
We're gonna put on the imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing. We go. Smackdown or Raw?
Smackdown.
Favorite movie?
Django Unchained.
Let's go. PlayStation or Xbox?
PlayStation.
Favorite color?
I don't have one.
Fair enough. Batman or Spider-Man?
Ooh, Spider-Man.
Favorite slam?
Spinebuster.
Always. It's the best. Naruto or Dragon Ball?
Dragon Ball, because I don't know anything about Naruto. So by default.
Favorite podcast?
So my favorite TV show is The Wire, and there's a podcast that covers each and every episode, and it does deep dives into each and every episode. It's called Way Down in the Hole, and it's with Jamel Hill, the lady that used to be on ESPN.
Hey.
That's my favorite podcast. It's awesome. That or the Attitude Era podcast, but everybody knows about that.
Okay.
Yes.
Then nominate one person that you want to see on this show.
Oh man, there's so many people. Has Andino done your show?
He has.
Of course he has.
Twice,
Saul.
actually.
Has Saul been here?
No, so Saul is
Yes.
someone I want to bring on.
Yes, dude, he's so man, you gotta get it. I'm laughing just thinking about him sitting there and having to answer your questions. It's making me laugh. You got you gotta get Saul. It's weird.
And last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person who comes on this show: favorite curse word?
I don't have one. I don't have one, man. I don't. It's weird. I don't know, man. Like I usually only curse out of anger, so it's like I like when I'm mad, I'll like just. It's got to be the F-bomb. It's got to be because it's so versatile.
Oh yeah, no. I tell everybody, like, hey, full transparency. Like I and it's funny. I probably should have mentioned this before we start recording. Oh yeah, this is a podcast where if you're dropping curse words, you're dropping curse words. It does not matter.
Yeah.
So I tell everybody, I was like, if you don't go check out the history of the F word on YouTube, which is only like a 5-minute long video.
Okay.
YouTube,
I'm gonna need to do that.
I'll send you the links so that you can check it out. It's like one of my favorite videos of all time. But yeah, those are all of our questions. So the last thing I need is for you to let our viewers and our listeners know where they can find you.
Okay, you can find me at it's very easy. All my socials, you can just look me up, AK Willis. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, AK Willis. Twitter is actually you can find me AK Willis, but my handle is at Target Acquired, at Target AK _ acquired. So I know that's kind of weird, but just AK Willis on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and that's where all my stuff is. And I actually have enough footage on the interwebs to where you can YouTube me, and I'll pop up there too. So if you want to check out some work of mine, I'm on the tubes as well. So
also, don't forget to go to iswhatamaneuver.net /
yes, please do that.
/ AK Willis. I know I've seen it. I was like,
shout out to What a Maneuver, dude. They have really good shirts. Like honestly, they're really, really nice t-shirts. They're great. And they're cheap to work with, so they're great. Love What a Maneuver.
I love my What a Maneuver store. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes, dude.
Full transparency, we also have a pro wrestling tees for the 3 Count podcast, as well as the Red Dog store. But you know, What a Maneuver as well. They're gonna be also having our stuff for the 3 Count podcast. So
yeah, dog. Shout out.
Big shout outs to those guys. But you guys know what that means, so we gotta take us home.
Let's go.
So this is the 3 Count podcast presents Now Entering the Ring. And like I said, I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. That's right. You could call me your Sherpa, but like every good Sherpa, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you. That's why it's never about me, but it's about who's entering the ring. And you see him right there next to me, the big man himself, A.K. Willis, the master of the pounce and the spine buster. So you
That's
guys
right,
know what
that's
to
right.
do. Tune into the next episode and be there, or you wait for this episode to end, you wait for that outro, and you choose another episode.
That's it.
Peace.
I love it.
What's going on, 3 Count Nation? I'm Clifford Red Dog Miller with the catchphrase. But what I really want you to do right now, go to twitter.com, right? Go over there, find us at the 3count_pod, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a comment. We want to talk to you guys. Go to IG at the 3Count Pod. Give us a like, give us a follow, leave us a comment. We want to interact with you. Go to youtube.com, give subscribe, turn the bell on, turn the notifications, leave a comment. We want to talk to you. Go to anchor.fm/the 3Count Podcast, and in there, you can leave us a message, and we will talk to you. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that we want to talk to you. We want to have fun with you guys, and we love listening to what you guys have to say. Also, one thing I need you to do for me, the 3Count Podcast also has merchandise. Oh! At prowrestlingtees.com/the 3Count Pod. Please go buy our t-shirts. We love you guys, and we hope you love us too. So show us some support, please.